to Law and Crime. I'm Michelle Yu, and thanks so much for joining us. We're continuing to discuss the Doomsday cult mom, Lori Vallow Daybell, out in Boise, Idaho. The 49-year-old defendant faces conspiracy and first-degree murder charges in the deaths of her two children, 7-year-old J.J. Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. A third victim includes her husband's first wife, 49-year-old Tammy Daybell. Meanwhile, Chad, her husband, faces similar charges and will be tried separately. No cameras are allowed in this courtroom, but along with our audio recordings, Gigi McKelvey has been inside that courtroom being our eyes and ears. Before she comes on, we're going to take a look at an audio clip from yesterday's testimony. This is April Raymond, Lori Vallow's former friend.
In 2018 or 2019, did she start to talk about multiple lives, being someone else in a previous life?
Yes.
And did you believe in that?
No.
And did the church that you two attended together, is that what they taught?
No.
Okay. Did she, in July of 18 or February of 19, did she start to talk about zombies?
Not in 2018, but in 2019.
Okay. And is that something that you two had previously talked about in Hawaii in 2016?
No.
So that was something new as well?
Yes.
How about casting out evil spirits? Did Lori have that new belief that she had some power to do that?
Not that she shared with me.
Okay. In July of 18 or February of 19, did you talk about castings?
No.
Okay. How about a light and dark scales? Did you ever hear that, or did she talk to you about that?
Yes.
And when was that?
In 2019, at my home.
Okay. And did you think that was unusual?
Yes.
Certainly something that you two had never talked about when you lived in Hawaii previously in 2016.
That's correct.
Did she tell you in 2019 that she was a goddess?
Yes.
And what was your reaction to that?
I just tried to not react and just listen to her.
You mentioned that she said she was a leader of the 144,000. That happened in the February of 2019?
Yes, sir.
And had she ever mentioned that in 2016?
Not in 2016, but in 2018.
So that was key testimony from yesterday, but now we have Law and Crime's Gigi McKelvey here with us. So Gigi, welcome. In some courtroom drama today, we hear that Melanie Gibbs' husband, David Warwick, listened into some of his wife's testimony before realizing that he wasn't supposed to be doing so. And it's my understanding that the judge ultimately decided that he is still allowed to testify. Can you elaborate on all of this for us?
Yeah, so we had a little meeting outside the jury, outside the presence of the jury, where he admitted to listening to about 45 minutes of her testimony before it hit him. He wasn't supposed to. He said he really wasn't listening to the context, but more just how her voice sounded to see if she was doing okay. There was some back and forth. The state obviously wanted him to come in. The defense did not. Judge Boyce did rule that he would be able to testify, and so he just got off the stand.
Now let's get into the meat of his testimony here. What has stood out to you about that so far?
It's a lot of things that we kind of already knew if you followed this case, but really it was just he was one of the last people to see J.J. Vallow alive. He was there at the time J.J. was murdered, apparently in Alex's apartment. So Lori had told him that J.J. was out of control. The morning that he was leaving, he asked to see J.J. Lori said that he was climbing up on the refrigerator, up on the top cabinet, knocked over a picture of Jesus. So she had Alex come and get him. And that was, he had specifically asked to say goodbye to JJ. He has a son with special needs and tried to connect with JJ, but ultimately JJ never really acknowledged his presence. So, but he did want to say goodbye, and that never happened because unfortunately at that point, JJ was already likely at Chad's property being buried.
How has the jury been reacting to his testimony, especially the parts where he discusses certain visions he claims that he has?
I don't think this jury's getting shocked as much as they were last week. I think it's kind of become the norm to hear some very off-the-wall religious beliefs. They're taking a lot of notes. I will tell you, pretty much every juror is jotting down notes as these witnesses testify, which I totally understand if they don't know the case, which they don't seem to. This can get very convoluted, and they're going to need something to refer back to in deliberations.
Who else was called to the stand today, Gigi?
We had several witnesses. We started off with now Sergeant Nathan Moffat, who was originally the lead investigator over the murder of Charles Vallow. He was promoted in 2020 and replaced, but essentially went through that little timeline. It wasn't really anything new from yesterday, where he talked about the ride home. He drove Lori, Alex, and Tylee back home after those interviews and said the conversation was lighthearted and nonchalant, as if none of this had happened. Then they called the babysitter that Lori hired there in Rexburg, who was going to watch JJ for what she thought would be an extended amount of time over several months or however long. And then they called the principal from Kennedy Elementary, the school JJ went to for just a couple of weeks. I think in those two witnesses, what the defense was trying to push is that Lori was looking at these two places long term, not as if JJ was going to be murdered just weeks later. That's kind of the vibe I got.
Well, who do you think the state will call after lunch now?
I've heard that we're going to start getting into some cell phone data, maybe some pings of where people were at crucial times, which is something I've been interested to learn. Other than that, I haven't heard anything else about who's coming up later today, but I did hear that witness will come at some point today about the cell phones.
Gigi, how much longer do you think the state has in their case?
It's flying by. I mean, they're going through these witnesses very quickly. Cross-exam has been little to none at times. And, maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at the most. I just don't see this dragging out for 8 to 10 weeks like they've said. Of course, that was mainly, I think, when death was on the table and it was going to be a much, much longer process for mitigation and that kind of thing. But now, 2 to 3 weeks, I'd be surprised if we go much further than that.
Is there still speculation that the defense case will be short?
That's what I've heard. I mean, it's nothing confirmed, nothing official's been put out there, but I've heard if they put anybody on, it wouldn't be many. So that in itself will shorten how long this trial goes before the jury gets it.
Well, Gigi, you've been covering this since the beginning. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we let you get back into that courthouse?
It's just been very interesting to watch the process. Lori, a couple of times, kind of giggled to herself and talked to her attorneys while David Warwick was on the stand. And so you can tell, we know that he was labeled as somebody who was dark in Melanie Gibbs' life. We heard that on the phone call that she recorded that was played in court. So we know Lori's not super fond of David Warwick, and that was pretty obvious today by her reactions when he was on the stand.
Well, Gigi, thank you so much for your great reporting as always. Until next time, go follow Gigi McKelvey on Twitter at Pretty Lies and Alibis. We'll see you soon, Gigi.